Welcome to this place called Earth and the project Moral and Ethical Inversions. In this short, I discuss the inversion of professionalism, why emotions aren't unprofessional, but suppression is. So before we begin, take a slow breath, not to calm down, but to invite yourself back into the part of you that has had to stay very quiet to survive in professional environments. That part of you that feels, those senses, that reacts, that knows when something is off. That part is the focus of this episode. We've been sold an elegant story. Professionalism means being composed, neutral, unemotional, and objective. On paper, it sounds sensible. In practice, it becomes a weapon, because what most workplaces actually mean is, don't show us your humanity if it makes us uncomfortable. So crying is unprofessional, naming unfairness is disruptive, admitting burnout is not being a team player, saying this doesn't feel right is being difficult. And slowly, over the years, people learn to disconnect their inner moral barometer from their behavior. They show up, they smile, they comply, they follow processes, they hit KPI, while inside something is quietly dying. Emotions as moral signals. Let's strip away the corporate myth and look at emotions ethically. Anger often arises when a boundary is crossed or injustice is perceived. Anxiety often arises when there is uncertainty, contradiction, or a lack of safety. Sadness often arises around loss, disconnection, or meaninglessness. Numbness often arises after sustained suppression, when feeling becomes too threatening. These aren't weaknesses, they are moral data. They're how your nervous system tells you, this situation does not align with what you believe is right. This pace is not sustainable, or this agreement is costing you more than you can afford. When an organization asks you to be professional by ignoring this data, it is asking you to mute your ethical feedback system. That's not maturity. That's conditioning. Suppression as a moral risk. What happens when you consistently silence emotions at work? At first, you feel proud. I can handle it. I don't let things get to me. I'm tougher than others. Then, over time, it changes. You start noticing. You say yes when you mean no. You do work, is poor quality because you're rushed. You watch decisions being made that harm customer, staff, or the environment you feel uneasy, but you override it. You tell yourself, it's not my place. This is how ethical numbness forms. Most major corporate scandals don't start with evil villains. They start with ordinary people who repeatedly swallow their emotional responses until those signals stop registering. Once emotion is gone, anything can be justified. Not because people are monsters, but because their internal warning system has been shut down. The inversion. Emotions versus emotionalism. To be clear, expressing emotion is not the same thing as being emotionally chaotic. There's a difference between naming your anger versus acting out your anger. Saying, I feel uncomfortable about this decision versus screaming at your boss. Saying, I'm nearing burnout and can't take on another project ethically versus blowing up and disappearing. The professional world has lazily conflated emotional honesty with emotional volatility. So people who engage in regulated emotional truth-telling are treated the same way as those who are uncontained and reactive. That's deeply unfair and strategically convenient for systems that want no emotional disruption at all. Why systems fear emotion? Why would companies want emotional flatness? Because genuine emotion slows unethical decisions, challenges unfair treatment, reveals power abuse, exposes hypocrisy, disrupts blind obedience. A worker who feels is a worker who might say no. A worker who feels is a worker who might say this isn't right. So it becomes safer, structurally, to idealize the emotionally muted worker, the one who just gets on with it. From an ethical perspective, that's terrifying. Redefining professionalism, true professionalism isn't wearing a mask, never reacting, being always available, suppressing your needs. True professionalism is telling the truth with composure, honoring your limits, refusing to collude with unethical behavior, taking responsibility for your impact, staying emotionally present without collapsing. A professional is not someone who doesn't feel. A professional is someone who doesn't outsource their feelings to others. I feel this. I'm responsible for how I express it, but I will not pretend it isn't there. That's ethical adulthood. A small experiment. If you're listening and this is hitting a nerve, try this. Over the next week, don't force yourself to be professional in the old sense. Instead, ask, what am I actually feeling right now? What is this feeling trying to tell me about the situation? Is there one small, grounded, respectful way I can honor this truth? Maybe it's setting a limit. Maybe it's saying, I need more time. Maybe it's refusing to laugh at a harmful joke. Maybe it's asking a clarifying question in a meeting. Every small act of felt truth makes the environment slightly more ethical. So to close this short, emotionism was never the problem. Unregulated reactivity is. And so is the moral laziness of pretending that a silent workforce is a healthy one. Emotion isn't the enemy of professionalism. Inauthenticity is.